Hi everyone, welcome to Chalchitra Talks. I'm Vaani, and this week I want to give you 5 reasons why you should pick up Catcher in the Rye. Even before Salinger in 1951, there was Keats and Fitzgerald talking about teenage angst, and then Sylvia Plath in a Bell Jar and Charles Bukowski discussing his teenage years in Ham on Rye. These people gave voice to the teenage angst, all collectively. But what actually draws Catcher in the Rye apart is that for the first time, probably teenage angst was taken seriously. Teenagers have long been considered this abrupt generation that is just against the moral rules and listen to violent rock music, etc., etc. And they abrupt everything. Their hormones are out of control and everywhere, all over the place. And this misunderstanding with the society is something that makes probably every teenager feel that this world is uncaring and nobody understands them. And this is what is the territory of J.D. Salinger. Catcher in the Rye is about a 17-year-old Holden Caulfield who has been kicked out of his school for the second time from a different school, and he's going back home before the vacation. And he takes a halt at New York for about 6 days until he runs out of money before going back home. He's waiting for the letter from the school to be delivered to his parents so that he doesn't have to deliver this news to them in person. He's hoping that by the time he gets home, the letter is already there. The first reason why you should pick up Catcher in the Rye is very basic. I think this is the reason why this book is still a classic, even when we haven't had one movie about the book. The language and the voice it gives to the struggles of a 17-year-old. Holden Caulfield's relentless commentary about his fellow human beings, the world, the morality, and the sexuality, everything. And the way he seems to be so careless and indifferent about his self-destructive trajectory. There is something that is so relatable in his writing. He just thinks everyone else is a phony. Holden Caulfield has little regard for authority, but despite that, there is much more to him than his teenage rebellion. And this is what brings me to my second point. Holden Caulfield's frank admissions about contradictions, imperfections, and complaints about the other individual will of course irritate you at some point. You will be agitated to see that the protagonist of this book is just complaining and complaining and complaining. There is no good that he sees in the other individual. And this might set you off a little because if you are complaining so much about these things, do something about it. And that is when you realize that underneath it all, Holden Caulfield is just a teenager who is afraid of growing up. He's at the cusp of adulthood and he's trying his best to hold on to his innocence and the innocence of other people around him. There is a point in the book where he is in New York and he makes a snowball and he wants to throw it at something or someone, and the only reason why he's not able to throw it at a car is because it looks so white and innocent. And this is something that hints at his fears. He just does not want to grow into being an adult because he's already started to seeing the misery of adult life. The third reason why you should pick up Catcher in the Rye is this. Our protagonist is his own anti-hero. He is sensitive and witty, yes, but he's also very immature and vulgar. In one moment, he will be disregarding people who showcase honesty and rules and regulations with a snarky comment and a slight confession. And in the other moment, he will be respecting them with all his manners. This brings me to my fourth reason. Holden Caulfield is an easy victim. While you might imagine such a teenager will be a savage, he is actually being bullied. He's beaten by a pen. In his need to being listened to in order to talk to someone, he strikes up a conversation with the most random people in New York. His cab driver, a prostitute, a nun, his old friend, and so on. He just wants to be heard, and you feel for this boy because you see where he is going wrong and you can't do anything about it. Because I think all of us have been there where he is standing now. Thinking of it in hindsight, you will realize that perhaps this is the reason why Salinger's dirty realism struck up such a controversy with so many people. There are so many murderers who've taken inspiration from Catcher in the Rye. John Lennon was shot by someone who was inspired by Catcher in the Rye. There are so many teachers who've been fired for recommending this book to their class. While Catcher in the Rye is the second most taught book in school, this brings me to my fifth reason. The underlying theme of death and grief. It's not in your face, but it is always lingering around. For example, Holden Caulfield talks about his brother, and you imagine a boy standing in a field with a baseball glove with poetry written on it. And he does so that he can read poetry when he's not fielding to someone who is just dead. And this hits you in the face because you're just imagining a living boy who's not living, who's dead. And then there is his classmate who comes to a tragic end after being bullied. And in fact, the very title of the book is about trying to save innocent kids from falling off a cliff. A reason why J.D. Salinger wrote it so was probably because, unlike so many authors who return from war and write war novels, like Roman Gary, who wrote Nothing Important Ever Dies, this book that I recommended in one of my previous recommendations. He came back from World War and wrote this beautiful war novel. But J.D. Salinger is one of those few writers who came back from war and wrote about teenage aggression, about growing up, about being at the cusp where you do not want to grow up. You just want to be at your home and be in its own comfort. You want to avoid everything that adulthood brings to you at all costs. So these were the 5 reasons why I really like this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I have already done a stream on it, but if that wasn't enough, here's also an episode. If these reasons fail to convince you, I'll just try one more thing. There are so many things I love about this book, but I think there is one passage that I would like to share with you because it will give you very little context, but maybe showcase how aggressive and extreme Holden Caulfield can be. And the passage goes something like this. Boy, when you're dead, they really fix you up. I hope to hell when I do die, somebody has the sense to just dump me in the river or something. Anything except sticking me in a goddamn cemetery. People coming and putting a bunch of flowers on your stomach on Sunday and all that crap. Who wants flowers when you're dead? Nobody. So this is one of my favorite passages, and if you have one, share it in the comments below. And I will be so happy to read them. So this was my recommendation for this week. I hope you like it, and I look forward to reading your comments about your favorite excerpts from the books. But before I go, I also want to tell you that if you like our work, you can now contribute to us on Patreon and YouTube community. We have divided our contributors into 3 major categories: Goodfellas, Gladiators, and Godfathers. Godfathers being at the top. And each category comes with a certain book. You get a badge against your name. You can join our exclusive WhatsApp groups dedicated to music, films, and books, where you can meet like-minded individuals and discuss certain things. So if you like our work, do contribute and support us on Patreon and YouTube community. And I will be back again with another recommendation for you next week.